Part 2. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 Encountering a Tough Situation. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, stood in front of her yard, looking at the things that were being sent to Minjiao courtyard, and she was so jealous that she almost bled. With her status as the eldest daughter-in-law, she did scour the other sisters-in-law's yards for a lot of money, but the things she had spent so much effort to acquire over the years were worse than compared to those sent to Minjiao yard. In the eyes of the scoundrels in other yards, she is actually worse than a bastard. The more she thought about it, the more unwilling she became. The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei pulled Xinying to her side and said, "Xinying, look, those things are supposed to be for you, but your aunt happened to bring your sister Qinjiao into the house at this time. Now, all the good things have been sent over there, so you won't be able to wear new clothes this year. The Hua mansion has always kept its expenses simple, and the wives of each house only have to spend 5 taels of silver in the accounting office every month. As for clothes and jewelry, they are all given by the old lady and the master during major festivals. 12-year-old Xinying has lived a comfortable life since she was a child by relying on her eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei to exploit other households, and her temper is even more domineering and lawless. Now when she heard that someone had robbed her things, she immediately sat on the ground and started crying. "Why do you want to give my things to others? Mom, how did you do it? I don't care, whoever robs my things, you have to get it back from me." "Okay, mother will take you there right now." Ling Wei, the eldest daughter-in-law, coaxed Xinying to stand up, with a proud smile in her eyes. It doesn't make sense for her to go to Minjiao to ask for something by herself, but if she takes Xinying with her, no one can say anything, not even the eldest lady, and what can she do if she is lying on the bed dying? The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei took Xinying to Minjiao courtyard, but she never expected that the old lady would actually send Nanny Su to Minjiao courtyard. Nanny Su was once the old lady's maid. Later, after she got Hua Yuelian, Nanny Su devoted herself to being Hua Yuelian's nanny. After Hua Yuelian left the house, Nanny Su was taken over by the old lady. Arranged to work in the accounting room. At the moment, Nanny Su held her head high and her chest high, standing at the entrance of the yard with her head held high and her eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, speechless. "The things sent here are all from Minjiao. If grandma feels it's unfair, she can go directly to the old lady for comment." In this Hua mansion, Nanny Su is famous for being cruel. She is fierce and rigorous in doing things. Coupled with the trust of the old lady, anyone who sees her will tremble. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, stood at the door holding the crying Xinying. Her wishful thinking was shattered by this rejection. Mother Su, who had already collected all the gifts, returned to the house and gently wiped Hua Yuelian's body with the soft handkerchief in her hand with warm water. Seeing the young lady he brought up on the bed in such a state, his eyes, which were as sharp as daggers just now, turned red instantly. "Miss, don't worry, I will take good care of Miss Qinjiao for you, but Miss Qinjiao is a little unsure. Shen, I just turned around and ran away after seeing you, but I think it will be fine if I wait for a while." It must have been her fierce appearance that frightened the young lady. "I'm afraid she will have to smile more in the future," Nanny Su thought with some self-reproach, but she didn't know that Fan Qinjiao was lying at the door and looking at her cautiously. Fan Qinjiao was not afraid, but too guilty. "In the last life, after my grandmother learned that her mother had died, she sent Nanny Su to the Fan mansion to take care of her. No matter how overbearing and rebellious she was, Nanny Su loved and pampered her. It was precisely because of Aunt Su that she lived a decent life in the Fan mansion, because Aunt Su was able to earn and rob, and never let her suffer the slightest loss. It was also under the supervision and discipline of Aunt Su. She had to go to Huafu every day to learn the Tao family's medical skills from her grandmother. Later, Zy Ling thought that Aunt Su was an eyesore, and she was wrongly accused of stealing her jewelry. Aunt Sue was beaten to a pulp on the spot with sticks by people from the Fan mansion. "Little miss, my little miss, I can no longer accompany you in the future. You must remember to live well and live with dignity." Mother Sue still thought about her before she breathed her last breath. But what did she do? She was so frightened that she pushed away Nanny Sue's hand covered with minced meat and blood, and happily threw herself into Zwy Ling's arms, because as long as Nanny Sue died, no one would look after her. And it was from that moment that she turned her life into a joke, to be manipulated. Fan Kinjao squeezed her aching heart. She would take the initiative to talk to Aunt Sue and get close to Aunt Sue, but before that, she must let Aunt Sue see that she was living an upright life. This is the promise she owes. For several days, everyone in the Hua mansion was busy preparing for the new year. On New Year's Eve, the weather cleared up and a faint sunshine shone over Ziliang Kingdom. Starting from Chen Hour, you could hear the sound of firecrackers outside the house and the laughter of children from time to time. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the Hua family men who had been working hard in the military camp returned to the various courtyards of the mansion. While washing and changing clothes, they were affectionate with their children and listened to their wives talking about the big things in the Hua mansion. The boys of the Hua family were happy when they first heard that Hua Yuelian had brought Xiao Qinjiao back home. They only had a sister who had been valued and loved by them since she was a child. However, the boys of the Hua family never expected that they would. They had always thought that their sister, who had been married to Fan Mansion, had been wandering around alone with her children for many years. "I heard that if Xiao Qinjiao had not been sensible, their sister would have died of illness right now. How dare the people of Fan Mansion? That's their only sister." A terrible coldness suddenly appeared in the eyes of every man in the Hua family, but the women who were busy washing and dressing the men did not notice it. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 12. Chapter 12, Living an Upright Life. At 1:15 p.m, the men of the Hua family left the main hall one after another. The men of the Hua family have always been in a good relationship. This is something everyone in the Hua family knows. The women just think that the men have gathered elsewhere to talk things over, but they don't take it to heart. Seeing that the master and the old lady have not arrived yet, the women gathered together and chatted, while the children played in the yard. Fan Kinjao entered the main hall under the leadership of Nanny Sue. He looked around and saw no trace of his uncles, and his heart was filled with deep disappointment. Mother Sue saw Fan Kinjao's unhappiness and quickly led her to where the ladies were playing. In the yard in front of the main hall, except for the fourth daughter-in-law Yafu's Mu Yan, who was being taken care of by servants and could not come, all the children from other houses were there. However, as soon as Nanny Sue led Fan Kinjao to stand at the entrance of the yard, they were zinnying blocked it. Go away, dog slaves like you who block the door are not welcome here." Zinnying has always had a bad temper and was outspoken. Her quarrels frightened the other children in the yard so much that they dared not speak. Mama Sue stood straight and upright in Huafu, but she couldn't argue with a young master. "Young lady, you can play here with peace of mind. I'll wait for you over there." Nanny Sue bent down a little and whispered softly. She was scolded when she was scolded. She was a slave, but it couldn't be because of her. So that the little lady of the family has a relationship with other girls. Go away quickly, don't hinder my eyes here." Zinnying disliked Aunt Sue's ink stain, so she twisted her body and pushed her towards her. Mama Sue couldn't hide, so she could only watch as Zinnying's raised fist hit her body. Fan Kinjao suddenly squeezed in front of Nanny Sue, reached out and pushed Zinnying to the ground. "Nanny Sue stopped you yesterday because she didn't want you to disturb my mother when she was sleeping. She is my nanny. Did you ask me for my opinion before you scolded her?" Fan Kinjao is stingy and seems to be carrying ice. The tone of her voice stunned Zinnying directly to the ground. There is a saying that goes like this: chickens look for chickens, ducks look for ducks, and smelly fish look for rotten shrimps. In the last life, under the influence of his eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei, Fan Qinjiao was just like Xinying, equally domineering, unreasonable, selfish and stupid. It can also be said that in this flower house, the only person Fan Qinjiao has never owed anything to is Xinying's mother. In this life, Xinying is still a rotten fish, but Fan Qinjiao no longer wants to be the rotten shrimp that matches her. Wow wow wow, after a long while, Xinying, who was belatedly aware of the situation, burst into a shocking cry. The other children who had been frightened to death were brought back to their senses by crying. They all stared at Fan Qinjiao, murmuring in their hearts, "This sister with a different surname from them is really amazing." The daughters-in-law from each hospital rushed over and saw Xinying sitting on the ground crying, and Fan Qinjiao had a cold face. They felt very happy. This Xinying should be taught a lesson. "Why are you crying? Just shut up." She had been staring at the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei for a long time. She never thought that her daughter could not even compete with the one who came in last, but even though she was angry in her heart, she could endure it, otherwise she could just slap Fan Qinjiao in the mouth. The yard was noisy, but a cold little hand was quietly inserted into the palm of Nanny Su. Hummy Su looked down and saw Fan Qinjiao looking at her eagerly with his little face raised. "Mother Su, I want to live an upright life, do you see that?" Mother Su's eyes turned red all of a sudden. Her young lady did not hide from her, she even protected her just now. Xinying has been crying and making trouble in the yard, and her words are full of nonsense, which is so unpleasant that there is no place to listen. As soon as the second elder of the Hua family entered the yard, they were noisy by Xinying's crying and had a headache. Just at this time, a servant hurriedly ran over. "Master Qi, madam, no, it's not good." The men in the house left the house murderously, looking at that direction. They should have gone to Fan's house. The women were stunned. The men of the Hua family were used to killing people on the battlefield. If they just rushed to Fan's house, the consequences would be unimaginable. The second elder of the Hua family quickly called the young man to prepare the carriage, but the sound of Xinying's crying was too harsh. The young man listened to it several times before turning around and running out of the main hall in a hurry. Tao Yuxian looked at the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei with a cold face and said, "Do you always raise your children like this?" There was some unhappiness between Xinying and Qinjiao. Qinjiao pushed Xinying again. Xinying probably said something because it hurt her. Ling Wei, the eldest daughter-in-law, covered Xinying. With a few words, he passed the responsibility to Fan Qinjiao. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. The Fan Family. The two elders of the Hua family left the main hall before the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei finished speaking. The second elder of the Hua family never thought of letting his daughter suffer in vain, but even if it was revenge, it would never be like this. Like the Fan family, the Hua family has been involved in the officialdom. Since they are officials, they have to take care of many more things than others. Although the Hua family is valued by the emperor, there are definitely not a few people in the government and the public who can't stand the Hua family. If the Fan family gets caught at this time, not to mention avenging their daughter, I'm afraid even their sons will be killed. And right in. Fan Qinjiao also understands this truth. She knew what the Fan family was like, and she would never let her uncles be caught in pigtails by the Fan family. Fan Qinjiao ran out of the main hall on her short legs. She knew a path leading to Fan's mansion. When she was captured and studied medicine with her grandmother, she followed that path and sneaked back to Fan's mansion. Later, she met Fan Qinjiao. When Bailey Rongs fell in love, he also had a private meeting with Bailey Rongs on that alley. That path recorded all her ignorance and stupidity, but it also became her life-saving way to find her uncles. On New Year's Eve, the streets were extremely lively with the sound of firecrackers. The four men of the Hua family had cold expressions on their faces, and they strode towards the Fan mansion with rapid strides. The boy in front of Fan mansion had never seen such a posture before. He was so frightened by the futile murderous intent that he turned around and ran into the manor. The master is in trouble. People from the Hua family rushed in. The boys were running around the house holding their heads. Throughout Ziliang, no one knows that the boys of the Hua family enter the army camp at the age of 7 and go to the battlefield at the age of 12. Each and every one of them has been exposed by the enemy's blade. If you want to kill them now, it would be like killing an ant. Just as easy. Fan Yurong, who was in the study, followed the sound and walked to the window. Sure enough, he saw several men from the Hua family stepping into the door of Fan's house with murderous intent. The Hua family is really bullying people. Fan Yurong's expression changed several times. He was looking at the men with red eyes. He was angry, but he was also afraid. This was not a sign of anger. Those who came in were simply killed. Hua Yaoding has made these sons more capable. Fan Zixiu, who was also standing by the window, sighed intentionally or unintentionally. They are all sons. Hua Yaoding's 4 sons have done a lot of meritorious deeds since they entered the military camp. Recently, they have become famous for pacifying the war at the border. But look at his only son, who only does nothing all day long. Know how to spend time on women. Fan Yurong felt guilty and immediately shouted to the boy, "Call all the people in the mansion and come out with me. I want to see what the people in Huafu have eaten." "How dare you dare to do anything to Fan Yurong, go wild. In this Ziliang, which man doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines?" In the final analysis, Hua Yulian is jealous and can't tolerate Su Ning's mother and daughter. Reckless, not to mention the entire family. Even if we add 100 or so people, they may not be able to compete with the men of the Hua family. Fan Zixiu looked out the window at the colorful men who were gradually approaching in a bold manner, and gradually began to think about it. "Come here, please bring the second aunt and the second young lady over." "Yes, sir." Fan Yurong's heart tightened. The prestige of the Hua family and the Fan family in the government and the public were equal. If it was just him and the boys of the Hua family who had a conflict today, even if the news reached the ears of the emperor would just ignore it and cut it off. It won't hurt either of the 2 families. But if the men of the Hua family beat the female family members and the second young lady of the Fan family, things would be completely different. "My son heard that Governor's son is in his residence at the moment." Fan Yurong suggested softly that as long as he invites Governor's son to witness the Hua family man's attack, firstly, he can protect the big one and the small one around him, and secondly, he can protect the whole family around him. It will definitely make several men of the Hua family lose their reputation and go to jail. "Then why don't you go quickly?" Fan Zixiu snorted coldly. Fan Yurong bent down, turned around and left the study. On the other side, Zi Weiling was summoned by the servant and appeared in the sight of the men of the Hua family holding Fan Swining. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 14. Chapter 14. Uncles, let's go home. Although Zi Weiling was born in a brothel, she has always been very courageous. Otherwise, how could she dare to push Hua Yuelian down? But now looking at the 4 iron-blooded men standing in front of her, no matter how courageous she is, she still can't. Fan Swining was so frightened that her hands trembled and she almost fell out of her arms. Fan Swining frowned in fright, and cursed with an angry face, "Who are you? How dare you scare my mother like this? Believe it or not, I will ask my father and grandfather to kill you." The men from the Hua family came here in anger, and they became even more furious after hearing these words. "This child has been covered in silks and satins and gold and silver since he was young, but all of these should have belonged to his family, Xiao Qinjiao. Where is Fan Yurong? Let him come out, Huagu, the eldest son of the Hua family, looked at Zi Weiling. No matter how wrong the child is, an adult like him must not argue with the child. Zi Weiling was shocked by the blood-red eyes, but at least he had seen some of the world in a brothel before, so he quickly calmed down. To be honest, my father is not in the house at the moment. If some of you came here because of the young lady's affairs, it would be the same as me. The young lady left when she said she wanted to, and all the big and small things in the house these years have been caused by me. In Zangluo, Zi Weiling looked like a young lady, but her frivolous eyes and reproachful tone showed no respect for Hua Yuelian at all. Huagu, the eldest son of the Hua family, was furious. This woman had robbed his sister of everything, and now she was blaming his sister for everything? He only hated that if the person standing in front of him at this moment was a man, otherwise he would cut him into pieces. Mom, why did these people come to our house to find two on New Year's Eve? Didn't those two get away a few years ago? Fan Swinning looked at Zi Weiling who was holding her, and her soft childish voice was full of its chilling anger. Ning you can't talk about your aunt like this. Even if your aunt abandoned her husband and left the Fan mansion 5 years ago, even if she is unkind, we cannot be unjust. Zi Weiling persuaded her with false sincerity. The man from the Flower family looked at the hypocritical mother and daughter, and the fire in his eyes burned even brighter. It is clear that children can be so cruel with their words, but if the people in the Fan family have ever owed anything to their sister, how can they teach a little child to say such dirty words? Zi Weiling looked at the clenched fists of the men from the Hua family and sneered in his heart. What she wants is to anger the men of the Hua family. As long as they dare to take action today, the people of the Fan family will have their own way to put them in jail. When Hua Yulian no longer has the Hua family to support her, she will be completely unqualified to compete with her. You say it again. Hua Yi, the third son of the Hua family, took a step forward, his gloomy face seemed to freeze into ice at any time. Fan Swinning raised her cheeks and said, Fan Qinjiao is a dog, and her mother is also a dog. They are just two lost dogs. Bang, a muffled sound exploded. The 3-foot-thick stone pillar of the pavilion next to her was punched by Hua Jun, the second son of the Hua family. The boys standing nearby were so frightened that they broke into cold sweat drop by drop. Not to mention speaking, they did not even dare to speak out loud. Fan Swinning was stunned and blinded by fright. She howled loudly and her little face turned the color of pig liver. You evildoers! You evildoers! You bully me! I will definitely skin you. Killing people. People from the Hua family are killing people, Zi Weiling screamed, hugged Fan Swinning tightly in her arms, lowered her head and rushed towards several men from the Hua family. From the moment she was led by the servant and bumped into the Hua family, she knew Fan Xixiu's purpose. It was true that Fan Yurong loved her, but Fan Xixiu had always looked down upon her background. If she could really help Fan Xixiu send the Hua family members to prison this time, she would be able to straighten her back in front of Fan Xixiu. Son. Although the men of the Hua family all have their feet on the battlefield and their hands stained with blood, they never hurt their children and their families. But now this drunken mother and daughter are really too hateful. When they think of their children who are still lying in the house to recuperate, sister, how can they tolerate this? Dong. With his eyes closed, he was as drunk as a wild bull. He just thought he had bumped into the handsome men. Suppressing a smile in his heart, he opened his eyes and was about to continue stalking, but when he raised his eyes, he was stunned. He was stunned, and even the smile in his eyes disappeared. The flower boy was still standing there motionless, but she bumped into. Then, what is that? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 15. Chapter 15 Shooting oneself in the foot. The young man in Fan Mansion was in a state of panic and did not notice Fan Qinjiao sneaking in. However, Fan Kinjao took in all of Zy Ling's false and sinister look. In the last life, Zy Ling told her face to face that he loved her and took care of her. They were a family and he would treat her like his own mother. But behind the scenes, he taught her to be selfish and stupid, and taught her how to use flowers. The family became the enemy. If Fan Swinning was once the sharp blade that cut off her limbs, then Zy Ling was the executioner holding the sharp blade. But now, looking at the familiar face of Zy Ling, Fan Kinjao's smiling face that was red from the cold was smiling. Since it was revenge, she hoped that the people who had harmed her would shout as loudly as possible, so that they would feel more comfortable when using the knife. In the distance, the shouting Zy Ling rushed towards the flower boy with his eyes closed. Fan Kinjao raised his frozen little hands and played with them in his arms for a moment, then bumped into Zy Ling's direction. Seeing that Fan Kinjao was pitifully thin, Nanny Su tried her best to put clothes on Fan Kinjao. Now that Fan Kinjao was running away and the clothes on his body were fluttering, everyone around him was stunned. Whose ball has grown legs and become a sperm? You, or you Fan Kinjao? Fan Kinjao didn't leave the house until he was 5 years old. Zy Ling knew Fan Kinjao, but she never expected that Fan Kinjao would appear here, let alone that Fan Kinjao would run into her arms. Zy Ling's reaction was quick, and she reached out to support Fan Kinjao in front of her. Even though she wanted Fan Kinjao to die in her heart, Fan Kinjao was still a child. How could she say this clearly if she bumped into Fan Kinjao so openly? But the moment she reached out towards Fan Kinjao's little hand covered with chilblains flashed with cold light, and the silver needle sandwiched between his fingers quickly and accurately pierced the 4 acupuncture points on Zy Ling's hand. The Siswai acupoints are located in the belly of 4 fingers and are extremely difficult to find. Even if an average doctor wants to find the same acupoints on 4 fingers at the same time, even if he has been practicing medicine for many years, it will only take him a moment and a half no matter how fast he wants to find them. But for Fan Kinjao, it was just the blink of an eye. She is not without talent when it comes to medical skills. It's just that in her last life, she was too stupid, and she fulfilled the traitor and delayed herself. Ah! Zy Ling exclaimed in pain, and the hand that was originally intended to support instantly changed to pushing. Zy Ling's strength was not great, but Fan Kinjao was a hard worker. Then Zy Ling's strength staggered and fell to the ground. Fan Kinjao, who really turned into a ball, rolled on the ground, past everyone's sight, and finally stopped when he hit the fake stone beside the pavilion. His forehead hurt violently, and something warm flowed down his forehead, dyeing his dark eyes red. Everyone was dumbfounded. Zy Ling's outstretched hand was still frozen in mid-air. Even Fan Swinning was so frightened by the dazzling blood that she closed her mouth. The flower boy was also stunned for a moment. When he came back to his senses, his originally red eyes were even redder, so red that they were moist and heartbreaking. The little man's face and eyebrows were as if they were carved out of the same mold as their sister. But compared to Fan Swinning, who was being held in Zy Ling's arms, one was fair and tender, while the other was skinny and pitiful. Kinjao, it's Xiao Kinjao. Huagu, the boss of the Hua family, reacted first and walked quickly towards Fan Kinjao. Several other men from the Hua family also followed Huagu. Several reckless men surrounded a girl the size of a pea. Their hands and heart trembled in pain. The servants of the Fan mansion looked at him with straight eyes. The men of the Hua family looked like black-faced kings on the battlefield. No one in Ziliang knew. When had anyone been so favored by a group? Fan Kinjao looked at the 4 uncles in front of him, his thin body trembling slightly. In the last life, she caused their wives to be separated and their family to be ruined, but they never blamed her even until their death. It can be said that her position as queen was built with the lives and blood of her uncles. However, such trembling was not the same in the eyes of the 4th son of the Hua family. Their little Kinjao must have been frightened, and must be in a lot of pain, And all this is the fault of that vicious woman. In an instant, the eyes of the four sons of the Hua family fell on Ziweiling like fire. What's your intention for attacking a little child so harshly? No matter how scheming Ziweiling was, facing these four pairs of fire-breathing eyes, filled with murderous aura, she had four men slashing at her with watermelon knives. If she hadn't hugged Fan Xuanning tightly, he held on in his arms, fearing that he would faint from fear. I. The eloquent Ziweiling choked until her throat hurt. She really didn't want to push, so why did she end up like this? Just at this moment, two figures hurriedly walked over from a distance. Ziweiling looked at Governor Sun, who was being led all the way by Fan Yurong. No matter how hard he tried to maintain his composure, his eyes turned black with anxiety. This scene was seen by the always upright Governor Sunday. She didn't know whether the Hua family man would be punished for trespassing into Fan's house, but her title as a vicious second mother who bullied the younger would definitely be confirmed. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Shooting oneself in the foot. 2. Governor Sun, accompanied by Fan Yurong, walked over in a hurry. Fan Yurong told all the faults of the Hua family man along the way, and even now he still speaks plausibly. Governor Sun doesn't know something. The Hua family man is just bullying me. No one in the Fan family knows martial arts, and he actually wants to do something to my wife. The children fought. Governor Sun, whose only name is Che, was 25 years old. He was well read in poetry and books, and was fair and honest. It was for this reason that Emperor Yongchang valued him favorably and entrusted the safety of the people in the main city of Ziliang to his personal control. You can rest assured, Minister Fan. Since I am here today, I will never stand by and watch. Sun Che spoke impartially, but he did not show any concern for Fan Yurong's deliberate efforts to please him. When he first heard what Fan Yurong said, Sun Che felt not very comfortable. When Ziweiling came in, Hua Yuelian left the Fan mansion with 5-year-old Fan Qinjiao. Although the people said that Hua Yuelian was self-reliant and jealous, he admired Hua Yuelian's attitude towards her. The emotional loyalty is unswerving, and it is even more painful for Hua Yuelian to trust someone else. However, this matter affects the Fan family on the one hand, and the Hua family on the other. And he is just an outsider now. But at the moment, regardless of the right and wrong between Fan Yurong and Hua Yuelian, it would be too impulsive and reckless for the Hua family man to cause trouble in Fan's house. In the distance, Ziweiling watched Fan Yurong and Sun Che getting closer and closer. She turned her eyebrows, tears welled up in her eyes, and her lips trembled a few times. Since it was difficult to talk about this matter, she simply pretended to be pitiful for the first time. As long as she said that she had tripped just now and didn't know what happened, it would be a fool's errand. Looking at Fan Qinjiao, whose face was covered in blood and didn't say a word, he was just a dull gourd who couldn't be beaten with a stick. He must not have dared to argue with her. Young master. Ugh. The words that Ziweiling had been brewing for a long time were suppressed by a sudden burst of crying as soon as he came up with a word. Fan Qinjiao, who had been sitting silently by the rockery, suddenly started wailing at the top of his lungs. Such a shocking voice directly attracted the attention of Fan Yurong and Sun Che. Uncle, uncle, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts so much when my second mother pushed me. Fan Qinjiao's smiling face as big as his palm made him cry like a pear blossom, making the four sons of the Hua family cry until their hearts ached. Fan Qinjiao, who do you think pushed you? Ziweiling screamed, almost fainting from anger. The person on the side who had just been talking about Huajia was not Fan Yurong. He never expected to see such a unique scene. He was stunned on the spot and his face was so red that it hurt. The fourth son of the Hua family was in a hurry because of Fan Kinjao's crying. How could he have time to talk to the drunken drunk who was shouting? For the first time, the four tough-minded men were so helpless. They looked at the half-grown baby in front of them. They didn't know how to coax her or comfort her, but they didn't know how to start. They were afraid of touching her again and hurting her. When Sun Che walked over, he saw Fan Kinjao surrounded by four tough guys beside the rockery. He quickly took out a handkerchief from his arms and gently covered Fan Kinjao's forehead. "Kinjao, be good, don't cry anymore." Sun Che's voice was gentle. This face is very much like her in his memory, and this face is also her child in his memory. Just between him and her. Why? Fan Kinjao looked at Sun Che in front of him, his memory clear. When Bailey Rongs ascended the throne, Sun Che was already a first-class minister in the court. Bailey Rongs admired Sun Che's talent very much. He originally wanted to win over Sun Che, but he didn't wait until real money and silver were sent to Sun Che's house. It was a letter of resignation from Sun Che. Later, Fan Kinjao learned that Sun Che, who had resigned and retired to seclusion, had been guarding Rongshan to work on his own. Everyone said that Sun Che was crazy and was ignoring his great future. But no one knew that there was actually a tomb on that mountain. Hua Yulian's grave. Fan Kinjao also accidentally knew that Sun Che was her mother's childhood sweetheart. Hence, Fan Kinjao not only remembers Sun Che deeply, but also has a good impression. For the first time in his life, Sun Che was looked at by a child and his whole body went crazy. She was obviously crying, but her dark eyes were so bright. Sun Che couldn't bear it any longer and was about to get up when Fan Kinjao took advantage of the situation and leaned into his arms, crying without even taking a breath. "Uncle, uncle, Kinjao has a headache." Sun Che looked at the big eyes full of tears, and the small face as big as a palm was red from crying. It was funny but also distressed. When he turned to look at Ziweiling, Sun Che's face had already darkened. Although Mrs. Fan Jiajian has been away from the Fan mansion for many years, as far as I know, the Fan family has never divorced her wife. Even if the Fan family's second aunt was born in a poor family and did not know the etiquette. It's better not to forget the priorities. Sun Che's words were like sharp knives, making Ziweiling's face turn blue. Fan Yurong saw that his woman was being bullied, so she hurried over. "But he is not here to apologize, but to scold. Kinjao, since you are a sister, how can you be so sensible? Not only did you beat your sister before, but now you are bringing the Hua family to Fan's house to make a fuss." Fan Yurong is smart. He knows that no matter how he explains at this time, it will not help. It is better to shift all the blame to Fan Kinjao, who is only 10 years old. As long as the four reckless men of the Hua family can't stand it and take action directly, there will be nothing to explain what is happening in front of them. After hearing this, the fourth son of the Hua family, sure enough, his hands began to itch again. But before they could raise their fists, they heard a crying voice that sounded intermittently. "My uncles taught Qing and Kinjao not to bully the weak, so, I brought Kinjao here to apologize to my second sister. Kinjao can understand Er Niang's resentment towards Qingyao, so, even if Er Niang pushed Qingyao, Kinjao will never complain again." Fan Kinjao cried pitifully. However, it is this sentence that not only excuses the Hua family man's reckless behavior, but also targets Ziweiling. Not to mention Ziweiling, even Fan Yurong almost fainted from anger. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 17. Chapter 17, Who is happy and who is sad? Ziweiling always knew that Fan Kinjao was naive and stupid, but he never thought that she could be so hateful. If she hadn't cared about those black-faced kings of in the Hua family, she would have wanted to tear Fan Kinjao in half. Fan Kinjao stopped crying, raised his blood-soaked handkerchief on his forehead, and said in a sweet voice, Uncles, today is reunion night, the food at home is ready, let's go back and eat. The men of the Hua family looked at that sensible little face, and their hearts ached. Why Sun Che appeared in Fan Mansion at this time, they only need to think about it for a moment to understand. If Xiao Qinjiao hadn't blocked this incident for them in a daze, they might have made some irreparable mistake. Okay, go home now. The four sons of the Hua family scrambled to pick up Fan Qinjiao, and swaggered out of Fan's house under the gaze of Zi Weiling and Fan Yurong, who were so depressed that they both vomited blood. It's getting late, so I'll go back first. Sun Che turned around and left. Fan Yurong, who came to his senses after a while, quickly arranged for a servant to take Governor Sun back. His old face was as embarrassing as it could be. Fan Zixiu in the study was even more upset and his face turned blue. I originally wanted people to see the Hua family's joke, but I ended up making such a joke. What does it mean to shoot yourself in the foot? He finally realized it today. Fan Qinjiao was almost carried back to the Hua family by the four sons of the Hua family. Several aunts were so frightened by Fan Qinjiao's bleeding forehead that they all turned pale. They treated the wounds and decoctions. Looking at the faces of the two elders of the Hua family, they were so bright and dark that they were covered with dark clouds. Tao Yuxian said coldly, "What the Fan family owes us, we will get it back sooner or later. Letting Yu Lian wake up is the key right now. Why do you have to rush to collect debts?" Hua Yaoding angrily said, "You can repay revenge in another way, but you must not act recklessly." The four dignified black-faced kings of were scolded so much that they didn't even dare to raise their heads. "Grandma, Grandma, I'm hungry, shall we eat?" Fan Qinjiao stretched out his red hand in a flattering manner, pulled Tao Yuxian's skirt, and tugged Hua Yaoding's sleeve. The second elder of the Hua family could certainly tell that this little girl was deliberately trying to make trouble for her four unsatisfactory uncles, but looking at the gauze wrapped around her forehead, the second elder of the Hua family finally nodded in distress. "Eat, eat. This little Qinjiao has just come back and has not yet gained 2 ounces of meat. Now he has lost blood again. How can the two elders not feel distressed?" Hua Mansion has always had strict rules. Even for the New Year's Eve dinner, there are 3 tables, arranged in an orderly manner. The fourth son of the Hua family and the second elder of the Hua family share a table, the female family members of the Hua family share a table, and the children share a table. But now, Fan Qinjiao, who had suffered a work-related injury, was sitting in the middle of the round table like a treasure between the 2 elders of the Hua family, stuffing various types of chicken, duck, and fish into his mouth. As for the 4 sons of the Hua family, who had been busy in the military camp for a year, they all stood around the table. They couldn't drink wine or eat meat, so they could only watch helplessly. Even so, their hearts are still sweet. From now on, their only niece is no different from their own flesh and blood. Whoever dares to bully their little Qinjiao again, they will still fight to the death. The other female family members did not care about the special treatment given to Fan Qinjiao by the 2 elders of the Hua family. Little Qinjiao had to suffer a lot from following their younger siblings, so it was natural for him to be pampered now. Only the eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, looked at Fan Qinjiao, who was loved by everyone, and her eyes turned red with jealousy. But at this moment, no one cared about her feelings. Even Xinying just kept her head down eating and drinking. In the Hua family, Fan Qinjiao spent this year like a star holding the moon, but in the Fan family, Zi Weiling was not so comfortable. Fan Zixiu, who failed to catch the 4 sons of the Hua family, attributed all the faults to Zi Weiling. Fan Zixiu himself looked down upon Zi Weiling's Fenyueshang background, and now he felt that Zi Weiling had no knowledge or wisdom. When it was time for the New Year's Eve dinner, Fan Zixiu only asked Fan Yurong to take Fan Swining to the front hall without saying a word to Zi Weiling. Zi Weiling, who was alone in the yard, looked at the pitiful few vegetarian dishes on the table, and was so angry that she reached out and lifted the table. If that little Fan Kinjao hadn't disrupted the situation today, how could she have been left out in the yard on New Year's Eve? After all, it's all that little bitch's fault. Looking at the broken dishes on the ground, Zy Ling thought it was Fan Kinjao's innocent and hateful face today, and she was so angry that she tried to avoid it with her feet. Amidst the drunken curses, Fan Yurong, who had been in the main hall for almost 3 hours, returned. As soon as Fan Yurong entered the door, he saw the mess all over the ground. "What are you making a fuss about? I accidentally fell down when I entered the door. I know my status is low, so how can I get angry even if I am bullied to the point of being bullied?" Zy Ling was filled with grievances but could not express them, so she could only cry resentfully. What Fan Yurong dislikes the most is Zy Ling's weak and helpless appearance, otherwise he would not have insisted on taking Zy Ling back home, because compared to Hua Yuelian, who is always aloof and never knows how to act coquettishly, Zy Ling he was so weak that he couldn't help but want to hold her in his arms and love her. You also know that those reckless men in the Hua family are rough people, so why should you care about what they say? Fan Yurong sighed and reached out to pull up Zy Ling who was sitting beside him. Zy Ling took advantage of the situation and sat on Fan Yurong's lap, with tears in her eyes. What if the slave family is being criticized? Since the slave family has followed the young master, they are no longer afraid of any gossip. The slave family just feels sorry for the young master, so how can the Hua family bully him? If the news spreads that the young master is at our door, how will the young master behave in the future? Fan Yurong's depression, which he had just suppressed, was aroused by an evil fire. It would be fine if there was only the Hua family today. The strange thing is that he was so smart that he brought Sun Che here, but in the end, Sun Che saw his joke. If Sun Che really spreads this matter, how will he, who is just a young minister, gain a foothold in the court? If the young master wants to earn back face in front of the Hua family, it's actually not difficult. Zy Ling lay on Fan Yurong's shoulder and blew in his ear. Fan Yurong frowned. "Do you have any ideas?" Zy Ling Mei smiled. "There was a banquet in the palace on the 3rd day of junior high. Didn't the emperor want to try out the medical skills of the famous lady? If the granddaughters of the Dr. Tao's family were to be compared one after another, I think the Hua family would be the best. No matter how thick-skinned you are, you still have to be restless, right? Don't be ridiculous. Kinjao's grandmother is the eldest daughter of the Liang Shenhe family. Who can be better than the grandchildren trained by her novices?" Fan Yurong also wanted to slap the Hua family in front of the emperor. But as far as medical skills are concerned, he is really intimidated. "Young master, there is no need to worry, the slave family has its own way of helping young master." Zy Ling smiled charmingly again, turned sideways and completely fell into Fan Yurong's arms. Her hands, which were fully aware of the man's weaknesses, also began to caress Fan Yurong's body. With the beauty in his arms, Fan Yurong couldn't control it at all. Under the increasing teasing, he finally pinned Zy Ling under him. "In that case, I will believe you once. Don't worry, young master, I will not let you down." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. Entering the Palace. On the morning of the 3rd day of the 3rd year of junior high school, Nanny Sue blocked Fan Kinjao's house early in the morning. Not wanting to get a response after knocking on the door for a long time, she quietly opened the door, but the scene inside the room made her eyes red on the spot. Fan Kinjao, who got up early, didn't care about his messy appearance. Instead, he was lying next to Hua Yuelian's bed. He held a soft handkerchief soaked in water with his small hand and gently wiped it on Hua Yuelian's pale face. On the cheek. Her movements were unfamiliar, but her careful look and her thin body were shaking slightly. Mother Sue's heart and eyes were sore when she saw it, and her tears couldn't stop flowing down. How old is her Miss Kinjao? How can she be so sensible? Fan Kinjao waited until she had combed Hua Yuelian's hair smooth, then slowly climbed down from the bed. When she turned around, she saw that Nanny Sue's tears were still flowing, but she smiled. Her small cherry-like mouth opened slightly. "Mommy, if you don't cry, my mother will wake up soon." She wanted to laugh, of course. In her last life, it was on this day that she completely knelt in front of Ziwiling and the Fan family. But in this life, she has to stand up again and stand in front of everyone. Mama Sue, who has seen countless people, was shocked by a little baby. Those phoenix eyes like clear water seemed to be looking at people lightly, but there was something brewing in them that even she couldn't figure out, but there was an indescribable calmness hidden in them. By the time Nanny Sue came to her senses, Nanny He, who was beside the old lady outside the hospital, came to urge her. She put the new clothes she had prepared a few days ago on Fan Kinjao's body, and selected an elegant bracelet and earrings from the jewelry sent by her grandma, put them on her wrists and put them on her ears, and finally combed her hair like a doll. Head, this is considered done. When Nanny Sue sent Fan Kinjao out, not to mention Nanny He, who was waiting outside the courtyard, she walked all the way towards the door of the house, and even the servants and maids passing by were amazed. It turns out that Miss Kinjao, who has suffered a lot and has no body left and right, is actually so beautiful when dressed up. She is not inferior to the other ladies in the house, and is even better. Tao Yuxian and Hua Yaoding, who were already sitting in the carriage, looked at their clean, elegant, and bright-browed grandson and nodded with satisfaction. "Kinjao, come and sit next to Grandma." Tao Yuxian smiled and waved. Yes, Fan Kinjao bent his knees respectfully, and then sat next to Tao Yuxian. He was afraid of the bumps of the carriage, so he let his little hand pass through Tao Yuxian's arm and held it gently. The more Hua Yaoding looks at this little man sitting next to his wife, the more he falls in love with him. He is sensible, well-behaved, and has inherited the beauty of his daughter. Isn't it possible that the Fan family is all blind? Otherwise, why would he leave his precious granddaughter alone and allow a prostitute seed to take root in Fan's house? Here Hua Yaoding was still admiring and pondering, but there was a strong aroma pouring into the carriage. Ahem! Hua Yaoding frowned because of the smoke. If he hadn't seen his eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei getting into the carriage with Zinying, he would have thought that someone's rouge was blasted into the sky by a cannon. Otherwise, how could it have happened like this? Choking. Different from the simple and elegant Fan Kinjao, Zinying was dressed in gold and silver to look noble. Looking at the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei, who was leading her, she even wore clothes from the bottom of the suitcase. If he hadn't been thinking about the emperor's banquet, it would be better to arrive a minute earlier than a minute late. Hua Yaoding really wanted to drive this heavily made-up couple out of the car. Furthermore, when the emperor holds a banquet, not everyone, even the family members of important ministers, can go. Except for the eldest daughter-in-law, other daughters-in-law are not eligible to enter the palace at all. They just put their daughters into the carriage behind them, watched their men go to the military camp, and then turned back to the house. Before long, 2 carriages drove towards the Ziliang Palace. As the carriage got closer to the palace, the unreal palace in the distance, which seemed to be shrouded in mist, gradually became clearer. Whether it is the auspicious beast spreading its wings on the eaves, the floating window carved with blue tiles, or the wall panels made of jade, they are all so familiar to Fan Kinjao. Following the 2 elders of the Hua family, the women of the Hua family walked into the palace on the ground paved with fine bluestones. Compared to the excitement and joy of other female members of the Hua family, Fan Kinjao was so quiet. The lies and betrayal intertwined with sweet words, the severed limbs and remains under Feng Guangxia's clothes, and the scenes of the past rushed into his heart one after another, making Fan Kinjao's limbs cold and even his heart turned into ice. Tao Yuxian frowned because the little hand he was holding was so cold. Is Xiao Kinjao scared? Fan Kinjao nodded and fell silent again. She is indeed afraid. She was afraid that she would lose control and kill those who owed her life with one move. It's a pity that she is still in her early stages. But fortunately, this life is still so long, and revenge must be repaid little by little, so that those who owe her will be more unforgettable, and life will be worse than death. Mother, mother, didn't you say that carriages are not allowed in the palace? Why can that person do it? Xinying suddenly shouted at the top of her voice. Everyone followed the sound and saw a carriage driving slowly on the spacious and bright palace road. Hua Yaoding just glanced at him and hurriedly bowed. Except for the emperor, there is only one person in the entire palace who can ride in a carriage with luminous pearls embedded on the roof. Tao Yuxian also hurriedly pulled the surrounding female relatives and knelt on the ground, waiting for the carriage to continue driving forward. Unexpectedly, the carriage that was moving slowly suddenly stopped. Because they were far away, the Hua family members could not hear the conversation in the distance. They could only see the little following the carriage nodding and bending. After a long while, the hanging car curtain was lifted slightly, and a hand stretched out from behind the car curtain. The silver-edged cloud sleeves half cover the back of the hands. The fingers have clear joints, are white and slender, and look like they are as proud as pine and cypress from a distance. Fan Kinjao recognized the owner of this hand with just one glance, and felt relieved. The phoenix sings in 100 miles. He survived. Her debt to Queen Zhengzi was finally settled in full. In the carriage in the distance, the flawless hand threw a jade pendant to the little beside the carriage window. Soon, the little hurried over. General Hua, please get up quickly. His Highness the Crown Prince has said that General Hua is so loyal and dedicated to the country that even the Emperor spared General Hua from kneeling and kowtowing. There is no need to bother with such formalities when we meet in the future. At the moment when the prince is favored, it is an honor that many people can only dream of. Hua Yaoding didn't feel the slightest bit happy, he just nodded lightly and got up. There are 4 princes in Ziliang, not counting the crown prince. When he ascends the throne in the future, he will inevitably fight with his brothers and fight against each other. He is loyal to the country and the emperor, but he does not want to get involved with the princes, let alone his children, being involved in the royal family. In the whirlpool of power struggle. Seeing that Hua Yaoding had no intention of talking, the little quickly raised the jade pendant in his hand and said, "This is a meeting gift from His Highness the Crown Prince to the youngest daughter of the Hua family." These words stunned Hua Yaoding, and even Tao Yuxian could not recover. There are 5 little girls from the Hua family beside her now, but there is only one jade pendant. Who is it for? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. No more connection. The jade held in the little eunuch's hand is as clear as glass. From a distance, it looks smooth and delicate, oily and shiny, as if it is about to ooze grease. Such jade cannot be seen even in the largest jewelry store in the city. Even the half-year-old children of the Hua family can tell that it is the best. Xinying glared at the other daughters of the Hua family, her greedy eyes filled with threats that she was bound to win. Not to mention, the hand that quietly held Mu Yan's hand squeezed Mu Yan's flesh tightly. The little hands were already a large amount of purple, but Xinying was still exerting force, and there were traces of blood on the skin under the slightly long nails. Whoever dares to rob her will suffer the consequences. Mu Yan was born to the 4th daughter-in-law Yafu, and she is also the youngest among the daughters in this flower house. She is very timid and introverted because she was born blind. Even if Xinying pinches her so hard that her eyes become wet, she is still biting her. The lips dare not make a sound. When the other young daughters of the Hua family saw this, they were so frightened that they did not dare to look at Xinying. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, raised her lips with a look of greed and pride. "Master, Madam, since His Highness the Crown Prince said that it was given to the youngest daughter of the Hua family, then my family's zinniing is definitely the most well-deserved one. Woolen cloth. The little girls standing here all have the surname Hua, but her family's zinniing is the eldest daughter of the Hua family. How can other little shrimps who are not on the stage compare with someone with a foreign surname who hangs around the Hua family all day long? Of Hua Yaoding and Tao Yuxian looked at each other and nodded lightly. Although the Hua family is different from other mansions, the daughters born to the eldest daughter are supposed to be more valued and can inherit Tao's medical skills. However, their daughter is not a kind person and leaves the family for the heartless man. Their daughter has been wandering away for many years, and now she is just a general bringing their grandson back home. Normally, Fan Qinjiao's status in the Hua family is higher than that of Zinning, but now. Why? In the final analysis, it is all the Fan family's fault. In that case, thank you, Tao Yuxian said softly. The little spoke with an embarrassed look on his face. He originally thought that since His Highness the Crown Prince was giving something by name, it would still look good if the person concerned took the initiative to accept it, but now his eyes were blinking like stars, and Fan Qinjiao didn't see any intention to come forward. In this case, he had to raise his hand and point in the direction of Fan Qinjiao. Actually, this jade pendant was given by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Fan Qinjiao, who was originally standing in a row with Zinning, suddenly took a few steps back and bumped into Zinning's back with his shoulder. Zinning only focused on threatening the sister behind her and didn't care about anything else. Now she was hit so hard that she fell out, plop, with a sound. It gnawed in front of the little like a dog eating shit. The words that the little was about to say were stuck in his throat. Looking at Zinning's embarrassed appearance, he could only say tactfully, "Miss Hua, there is no need to give such a big gift, I can't bear it." Grandma, the eldest sister is the eldest daughter of the Hua family. It is reasonable for the eldest sister to be given something from His Highness the Crown Prince. Little Qinjiao thinks that since the eldest sister can receive the jade pendant given by the prince, it is appropriate for her to give her a big gift. Fan Qinjiao said gently. He pulled on Tao Yuxian's sleeves, looking like he should be loved. Xiao Qinjiao is right. After hearing this, Tao Yuxian, who was already distressed, raised his hand to touch Fan Qinjiao's head lovingly. If the other children would have cried loudly, how could her little Qinjiao be so sensible? Since you know it's not yours, it's good to have some self-awareness. Ling Wei, the eldest daughter-in-law, smiled and glared at Fan Qinjiao. Even if you recognize your ancestors and return to your clan, a person with a foreign surname will still be a person with a foreign surname. Where did you get all this nonsense? Thank you. Quickly Hua Yaoding frowned and urged. Yes, what the master said. The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei nodded with a smile, but when she looked away, she glanced at Fan Qinjiao coldly, and then she changed her support to pressing Zinning, and they lay on the ground together. I would like to thank His Highness the Crown Prince for the reward. The voice that was deliberately raised seemed to wish that everyone in the palace could hear the reward from Prince Zinning of her family. The little stood there looking at Fan Qinjiao, unable to regain his senses. It would be fine if he didn't take the initiative to pick up the things. Why didn't he even want to return the things now? This is a reward from His Highness the Crown Prince. This is what many people dream of. Fan Qinjiao stood quietly next to Tao Yuxian, his long eyelashes hanging slightly covering the indifference and alienation in his eyes. Saving him was just because of his debt to Queen Zhengzi. Now that she has nothing to do with Empress Zhen 11, she has nothing to do with him anymore. Of course, she knew better that Bailey Fengming, who was sitting in the carriage, could hear her words, and she was even more sure that the majestic crown prince of a country would not be so shameless as to get out of the carriage and argue in person for a piece of jade pendant. Who exactly is it going to be given to? But somehow, just when she lowered her eyes, she seemed to see the carriage in the distance suddenly move. Although this jade pendant was only given to one person, and others did not need to kneel down to express their gratitude. In order to show their respect for the royal family, everyone still lowered their eyes and nodded. Just as time passed bit by bit, I never heard the sound of the little giving the jade pendant. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, who was kneeling on the ground, had sore knees. Xinying was not much better either. Her arms raised high were sore as if they were soaked in vinegar. She was shivering in mid-air but did not dare fall. Obviously I was receiving a reward, but it became more and more embarrassing. "Welcome to the Crown Prince," Hua Yaoding's voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. Everyone looked up in surprise, only to see that the carriage that had been parked in the distance was very close at some point, and the jade pendant held by the little was being gently held in the beautiful hand that stretched out the window. "Play with it gently. Welcome to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Under the leadership of Tao Yuxian, all the little daughters of the Hua family also hurriedly knelt on the ground. The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei, who was kneeling on the ground, pressed Xinying's head and banged it on the ground. "Thank you, His Highness, the Crown Prince, for the reward. Thank His Highness, the Crown Prince, for the reward." The voice of thanksgiving was as loud as chanting sutras, but the people sitting in the carriage ignored it at all, and just said calmly, "Fan Kinjao, come here to receive the reward." A sound like the tapping of jade came out of the car, and the lingering sound added a hint of laziness. But it was this voice that sounded as beautiful as the sound of nature that shocked everyone. And everyone's eyes turned to one person in shock. Fan Kinjao. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 20. Chapter 20. Beautiful You. Tao Yuxian and Hua Yaoding glanced at each other quietly, saying they were not shocked would be a lie. There are countless ministers in the court who want to be the prince's followers. Unfortunately, His Highness has always been indifferent and distant. Apart from meeting Prince Tun's youngest son, Shi Chang, he is not a stranger to other ministers. But they are just casual acquaintances. But now His Royal Highness, who is said to be aloof and arrogant, actually wants to give something to their little Kinjao family, or to give it to them by name. How can this not surprise the two elders? Looking at the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei, who was kneeling on the ground with her arms raised to the point of cramping, her face suddenly turned purple and she was staring straight at Fan Kinjao, unable to believe what she heard. There is a mistake, there must be a mistake. Then who is Fan Kinjao? It's impossible to ride on her Xinying's neck, absolutely impossible. "Miss Hua, why are you still standing there? Hurry over and receive the reward." The young eunuch's low voice was like the straw that broke the camel's back, completely crushing the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei, who was still comforting herself, to the point of paralysis. Sitting on the ground. Now that Bailey Fengming was calling him by name, Fan Kinjao, no matter how eloquent he tried to evade, was delusional. He bit the bullet and under the gaze of everyone, he walked to the car step by step as if going to the execution ground. Outside the window. "My dear daughter, I would like to thank His Highness the Crown Prince for the reward." He slightly bent his knees, and a sweet smile appeared on his face that could convince everyone. "You seem surprised by my reward," the pleasant voice in the carriage sounded again, as gentle as the warm wind. Fan Kinjao did not deny that she was indeed surprised. She really didn't expect that His Highness, the Crown Prince of a country, could be so shameless and worry so much about a jade pendant. "The reward from His Highness the Crown Prince is too valuable, and I feel ashamed that I don't deserve it." Fan Kinjao suppressed the rolling of his eyes in his heart and considered it. The words were said in a very childish way, and even the voice was full of childish innocence, but the words were so tactful and thoughtful that one could not fault him at all. Bailey Fengming, who was sitting in the carriage, still held a jade pendant in his other hand. His full fingertips gently touched the exquisitely carved characters on the jade plate, and his eyes turned dark as a deep pool. When he heard the sweet voice, flowing into his ears like honey, he actually smiled, and even the corners of his phoenix tail-like eyes became more and more handsome. She was so eager to break up the relationship with him, but now she could pretend to be so well-behaved and sweet to accept the reward, so clever, quick and yet not sharp. If he hadn't seen with his own eyes that she was only a 10-year-old girl, I really can't believe it. Whoa! A burst of crying suddenly sounded. Everyone was stunned. The little standing aside was so shocked that his eyes widened. "Oh my dear Zinniang, aren't you going to break my mother's heart by crying like this?" "But what's the use of just crying? His Highness the Crown Prince said that this reward is not for you anymore, how can you cry?" "It's useless to make trouble," the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei said helplessly and pitifully, but the hand that secretly squeezed Zinniang's waist became harder and harder. Zinniang was in so much pain that she couldn't even speak. She just kept crying with her mouth wide open. Tao Yuxian frowned and turned cold. "What are you doing? How can you be so presumptuous in front of the prince?" The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, trembled all over. She knew that she shouldn't cause trouble in front of the prince, but she really couldn't see the jade pendant flying away just like that. Especially given to someone with a foreign surname. "It would be great if you were here. I love you the most. Even if the jade pendant I rent is not as good as the reward from His Highness the Crown Prince, it can still make you feel better," the eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, said sadly. That hand was wiping the dry corners of his eyes. Seeing this, Tao Yuxian looked at Hua Yaoding beside him. At the time when the Northwest was pacified, Ling Wei's biological father, in order to protect Hua Yaoding from deadly poisonous arrows, gave his only daughter to Hua Yaoding to take care of him before he died. Hua Yaoding felt a suffocation in his chest. If he hadn't been worried about this, he would have really wanted to kick the ignorant couple back to the house, so as not to embarrass themselves here. "Your Highness, Uncle Ling once sacrificed his life and blood for Ziliang. Even the Emperor will always talk about his achievements. How about your Highness just give this jade pendant to my eldest sister? I think if the Emperor knew about it, he would definitely do it." Gratified, Fan Qinjiao opened his big eyes and persuaded in a childlike manner, and even raised his feet to retreat. Just as she moved, the hand that had been stretched out by the car window took hold of her cold little hand. Fan Qinjiao was shocked and even more stunned. He wanted to dodge but couldn't, so he just stood there. "The people of Ziliang will never forget Grand Administrator Ling's sacrifice for the country." Bailey Fengming paused, then handed over a handkerchief. Lian 11. The little quickly came over, took the handkerchief and handed it to the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei. The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei looked at the handkerchief held in front of her and felt so angry that her chest hurt. She never expected that she risked her life and pinched Zi Zinniang, but in the end she only got a handkerchief. It would make sense to reward her with a handkerchief alone. After all, it was a reward from the prince, but now it is compared with Fan Qinjiao's jade pendant. When I got up, it looked shabby no matter how I looked at it. I would like to thank His Highness the Crown Prince for the reward. With the handkerchief in front of him, the eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei kowtowed her head with gratitude even though she felt resentful in her heart. Fan Qinjiao stared blankly on the spot, also frightened. This Bailey Fengming is really capable, but he only used a handkerchief to block Ling Wei's mouth and reduce all the excuses. The palms of my hands felt itchy. Fan Qinjiao looked back and saw the slender fingers holding his hand blooming before his eyes like an epiphyllum. "You are so beautiful." Jade's voice came from the carriage again, but it was very low. After saying that, the beautiful hand took back the carriage, and the jade pendant finally fell into Fan Qinjiao's palm like dust. The carriage started moving again, heading into the distance. Fan Qinjiao looked at the jade pendant in his hand, feeling the warmth that had not dissipated in his palm, and rolled his eyes heartily. This prince is really becoming more and more shameless. Seeing this, Tao Yuxian and Hua Yaoding quickly thanked them politely and continued to walk towards the banquet hall with the young daughters of the Hua family behind them. End of this chapter.